Welcome back. And now for the news in detail. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on Turkey over its military operation in northeastern Syria. The U.S. Treasury Department announced curbs on Turkey's defense and energy ministries, as well as the ministers of defense, energy, and the interior. The move freezes their assets in the U.S. and bans transactions with them through the U.S. financial system. U.S. President Donald Trump has also asked Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan for an immediate ceasefire in Syria. Damascus has deployed troops near the Turkish border after Kurdish forces struck a deal with the Syrian government on Monday. Russia's special envoy to Syria, Alexander Leventev, said Moscow will not allow clashes between Turkish and Syrian forces. The UK has also suspended arms exports to Turkey, calling Ankara's actions in Syria reckless and counterproductive. Turkey says it has killed nearly 600 terrorists in Operation Peace Spring in northeastern Syria. In a briefing, Defense Minister Hulusi Akar said Turkish troops have seized the control of key Tal Abyad and Ras Al Ain areas. He said Ankara's operation is not against the Kurds but against terrorist organizations. Speaking in Baku, President Tayyip Erdogan said Turkey has cleared over 1,000 square kilometer area from terrorists. The SDF said they are launching a major counterattack against Turkish-led forces near the border town of Ras Al Ain. The renewed battle for the border town follows the deployment of Syria's army near the Turkish border. For more on current situation, we are joined by Istanbul-based political analyst Michael Arnold. Thank you for your time, Mr. Arnold. With Washington imposing sanctions, President Trump calling for an end to the operation, and Kurds teaming up with Assad's forces, how will these odds stack up against Ankara?
I think the threat of U.S. sanction at this point won't have an effect on the actual operation. This is something that I believe from the Turkish side they were prepared for from the very beginning. And as I say, I think it's too little too late from the American side. Turkey has been determined to carry out this border operation for some time now. Obviously, they worked through other channels to try to accomplish it through other means, initially setting up agreements with the Americans to try to patrol jointly these areas to create a secure buffer zone along the border. They were very patient with this effort. This ultimately failed, and they moved in for an operation. So I don't think sanctions at this point will have much of an effect on that. In terms of the Syrian government forces coming to the area, obviously that complicates matters to a certain extent. But what is coming out of Moscow today, which of course is the main backer of the Syrian government, is that communication has been established to try to ensure that no direct confrontation occurs between both sides. And I would imagine at this point that despite the bravado that the Syrian government forces would not really want to engage Turkey directly in this area.
Mr. Arnold, Russia's disapproval of the violation of the Syrian territory is becoming louder with every single passing day. Can this operation, according to you, jeopardize the budding alliance between Moscow and Ankara?
At this point, I would say no. And the reason for that is because ultimately, and I think we're starting to see this play out perhaps on a faster timescale than we were initially seeing it, is that ultimately the major players, as they have come to be in Syria at this point, are Russia, Iran, and Turkey, with, of course, the Syrian government, the opposition being in there as well. I think what we're seeing now is that with the Turkish operation and with the withdrawal of American forces is that there will be a stronger push, particularly as this operation unfolds and as it comes to a close in the weeks and months ahead, to move forward the timetable for the political solution for the conflict in Syria. Let's keep in mind that the Constitutional Committee has been agreed upon between these three sides and between the Syrian government and the opposition as part of the Astana process, which of course is being led by Turkey, Iran, and Russia. So I think, obviously Russia has its concerns, all the players involved have its concerns, but I don't think at this point that the Turkish operation has any real serious repercussions in terms of their current negotiation tracks and their relationship with Russia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michael Arnold, for your time. Now we'll move on. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has discussed the security situation in Syria with Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Differences have emerged in the military alliance after NATO member Turkey began its offensive in Syria last week. Stoltenberg says many NATO allies are concerned about Turkey's actions. To talk more about this particular developing story, we have been joined by our correspondent from Brussels, Mia Alberti. Mia, thank you for joining in. What issues have the NATO Secretary General and British Prime Minister discussed in the meeting?
Well, we know that UK has been a very important player in reacting to the Turkish military operation in northern Syria, but so far we haven't heard anything from them. So this meeting was very important. And just after Stoltenberg left Downing Street and said what you just mentioned, that a lot of EU allies are concerned about the situation, he again condemned the operations in northern Syria. Just after that happened, we heard the UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab in the British Parliament announcing that the UK will halt its arms exports into the country. So that's a development from Tuesday, and we saw, for example, on Monday, several countries going forward with halting their arms exports, but the UK was not part of them. So today, after this meeting, it seems like the UK has been taking a stronger action against Turkey.
Okay, Mia, what is the stance on the future of ISIS fighters detained in Syrian prisons?
Well, this is something that concerns a lot of the countries that are part of the EU, and that's why countries such as Germany and France were one of the first ones to announce a halt in arms exports as a measure of sanctions against Turkey, because we have seen terrorist attacks happening in their territories, taken out by the Islamic State. So a lot of countries are concerned that these fighters will regroup and restart their operations, and more instability can come to Europe. And then we also saw these countries joining together yesterday on the European Foreign Affairs Council. We saw a resolution that said that each European country would be allowed to create an arms embargo into the country.
Okay, Mia, have the members discussed any proposal to ensure the stability of Syria, that militants don't get any sort of opportunity to regroup? As you have just mentioned, there might be a possibility of regrouping as well.
Exactly. I mean, that was one of the most important points coming out of the EU Foreign Affairs Council yesterday, where Federica Mogherini, the European Foreign Affairs representative, called for an urgent meeting of the global coalition against ISIL. And that means that they want to talk to the US about it. They want to talk with one of their most important partners in NATO to discuss what they want to do about this. We have heard that many ISIL fighters have been released or managed to escape prisons in northern Syria, and I know that is something that concerns a lot of European countries, the EU and NATO. So we will have to wait for that meeting, which will happen by the end of this week, to see any more developments and decisions on how to almost renew a fight against ISIL, something that was almost finished, that at least in public opinion was solved, and now it can become another issue for Europe and NATO.
Mia Alberti, thank you for your time, and our correspondent from Brussels updating regarding the details of the meeting between British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg. Moving on, 4 members of the government-allied Hashd al-Shabi militia have been killed in a bomb blast in northern Iraq. Police said the explosion happened inside a house during a military operation against the ISIS in northern Saladin province. The al-Shabi militia was formally incorporated into the Iraqi army in 2017. Iraqi authorities had announced ISIS had been largely eliminated after it regained the territories once held by the terror group. But such attacks show the terrorists still have a presence in rural areas of Anbar, Diyala, Kirkuk, Saladin and Mosul. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has left for Saudi Arabia as part of his initiative to promote peace and security in the Gulf region. Khan will meet Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Earlier, PM Khan visited Iran, where President Hassan Rouhani hailed his efforts for peace. Iran's president said an end to the Yemen war is a prerequisite to regional peace. The Duke and the Duchess of Cambridge have called on Pakistan's President Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Imran Khan. Prince William and Princess Kate Middleton are on a 5-day visit to Pakistan. During the meeting, Alvi commended the visiting dignitaries for their efforts to fight climate change and poverty. Prince William thanked the President for the warm welcome and hospitality. The royal couple appreciated the initiatives taken by Pakistan to combat climate change. This is the first visit by Britain's royal family to Pakistan in 13 years. They will travel to northern Chitral tomorrow and visit Lahore on 17th of October. Earlier, British High Commissioner Thomas Drew said the visit highlights the historical ties between Pakistan and Britain. Islamabad has condemned the Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh's statement in which he threatened to divide Pakistan into several parts. In a statement, Pakistan's Foreign Office said such a statement gives insight into the BJP's extremist mindset. The Foreign Office said it is highly irresponsible of the Indian minister to threaten a sovereign country in such a way. The statement said Islamabad is sure that the international community will take notice of such radicalism. It also said Rajnath Singh should have no doubt that Pakistan is ready to defend itself against any evil design. Indian occupying forces have arrested the daughter and the sister of the former Chief Minister of occupied Kashmir, Farooq Abdullah. The occupation forces beaten charged the women during a protest against India's revocation of Kashmir's special status in Srinagar. Suraya Abdullah and Safiya Abdullah were leading a peaceful protest against New Delhi's lockdown. Over a dozen other women protesters were also manhandled and arrested by the Indian troops. Former Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti said India wants to crush civil disobedience and push Kashmiris towards violence. She said the Indian government will later use this excuse to justify its brutal oppression in the occupied valley. Moving on to Afghanistan, where 23 Taliban fighters have been killed in air and ground operations in southern Zabul and northern Takhar provinces. The Afghan military says 6 others were wounded. In a statement, the military said 13 insurgents were killed in a ground operation in Zabul and 10 others in Takhar air raids. The statement said operation will continue until the area is cleared of insurgents. It added that a Taliban local commander was also among those killed in Takhar. Russian President Vladimir Putin has arrived in Abu Dhabi after completing his one-day tour to Saudi Arabia. Abu Dhabi's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan welcomed him at the airport. Moscow seeks to seal a dozen of agreements worth more than $1.3 billion with the UAE during the visit. In 2018, trade between the two countries had reached up to $1.7 billion. Putin will also discuss security situation of the Middle East with the UAE leadership. Earlier, Saudi Arabia and Russia signed a key deal to bolster cooperation among OPEC members and non-member countries. The two sides inked 20 multi-million-dollar investment contracts. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned with Indus. Welcome back. The UK's Leader of the Parliament, Jacob Rees-Mogg, says there is now enough support among British lawmakers to pass a Brexit deal. In a radio interview, Rees-Mogg said British politicians have had enough and want to get on with the divorce deal. The House of Commons has previously voted down the Brexit deal 4 times. Meanwhile, in Luxembourg, EU chief negotiator Michel Barnier will brief the bloc's ministers on leeway made in the Brexit talks. Discussions between EU and UK officials aimed at reaching a deal have intensified as the 31st of October deadline approaches. The bloc's leaders are pushing for an agreement before a major summit on Thursday. Failure to reach an understanding before the summit could force Prime Minister Boris Johnson to seek another delay. British police have banned Extinction Rebellion protests in London after a week of civil disobedience by climate change activists. Protesters blocked roads in recent protests, bringing life in the city to a standstill. Police said nearly 1,500 people have been arrested in the protests so far. In a statement, police said any assembly linked to the Extinction Rebellion autumn uprising must now end. The protesters, who have been assembling around government buildings for almost a week, demand major changes to avert the climate crisis.
We are here to raise awareness about this and to make a plea that, these investors, they need to change, because otherwise they will become they will no longer be suitable in this particular situation. Business as usual cannot function anymore.
In Jordan, living conditions for Syrian refugees are getting worse as the war enters its 8th year. Refugees fear for their livelihoods due to dwindling international aid and barriers imposed by the Jordan government. This report will tell you more about this.
When Syria fell into the war in 2011, Firas Othman brought his family of 7 to Jordan. After a year and a half, Othman was registered at the UN Office for Refugees. He started receiving international aid of 180 dinars a month. However, as time passed, the aid began dwindling.
I got a message from UNHCR telling me that next month would be the last time I will get the aid. I replied that I had a medical report of cervical spondylosis. They gave me aid again. But I know a lot of people who have been cut off from the aid.
Many Syrian refugees in Jordan don't know how their families would survive without assistance. Many hope to migrate from Jordan to other countries.
It's a big question. We have a lot of debt, and money is always scarce. Every day I call people in immigration office and I want to leave and find a better life.
The refugees said they miss their country but are afraid of returning home because of the ongoing deadly war that has killed countless.
India and Afghanistan are the most hunger-stricken countries in the world. The 2019 World Hunger Index lists India among the 2 most malnutrition countries in South Asia. The index shows India at 102 out of 117 nations, while Afghanistan is at 108 out of 117 countries. Meanwhile, China tops the list in the South Asian region and stands at the 25th position internationally. 17 countries, including Turkey, Cuba, Croatia, Uruguay, Ukraine, and Kuwait, are at the top of the list in the global index. The UN says a third of the world's nearly 700 million children under 5 years are malnourished or overweight. In its first State of the World's Children report since 1999, UNICEF said children face lifelong health problems as a consequence. UNICEF's executive director, Henrietta Fore, said if children eat poorly, they live poorly as well. The report said malnutrition's cost to the global economy is estimated at $3.5 trillion every year. It said 1 to 49 million children aged 4 or younger today face stunted development. Meanwhile, 2 billion people are eating too much of the wrong foods, driving epidemics of obesity, heart disease, and diabetes. In child obesity, the US tops the list with 41.86%. Margaret Atwood and Bernardine Evaristo have become the first authors to jointly win the Booker Prize for Fiction since 1992. Atwood's The Testaments and Evaristo's novel Girl, Woman, Other earned each author an equal share of £50,000 prize.
The judges of this year's Booker Prize have explicitly flouted the rules of the literary award. They chose the first joint winners in almost 30 years.
The 2 victors, if you like, congratulating.
The 2 winners of the 2019 Booker Prize for Fiction are Margaret Atwood for The Testaments and Bernadine Evaristo for Girl, Woman, Other.
At 79, Atwood is the oldest ever Booker winner.
We've both got curly hair. It's because of that. Yeah. So I'm very surprised. I would have thought that I would have been too elderly.
Meanwhile, Evaristo's win makes her the first black woman to win the Booker since it began in 1969, and the first black British author.
This is incredible. It is so incredible to share this with Margaret Atwood, who is such a legend and so generous. Thank you so much. This is incredible. I suppose a lot of people say this. I never thought it would happen to me, and I will say that I am the first black woman to win this prize.
The other nominees were Lucy Ellman, Chigozie Obioma, and Elif Shafak.
Lows on the highs of the business world, European stocks have climbed to a two-week high over the remarks of EU negotiator Michel Barnier for a possible deal with the UK. Retail company shares have risen to their highest since May, while travel and leisure have also hit a one-year high. London's FTSE 100 index gained nearly 0.5%. The Pan-European Stock 600 index also rose marginally. Meanwhile, Frankfurt's DAX 30 and Paris CAC 40 jumped nearly 1%. Gold prices continue to remain steady as markets await talks between Britain and the European Union. And now the weather situation from around the globe. That's all for now. Thank you for watching. For further updates, stay tuned to Indus Special.